Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm Dr. Bart. I'm your host. I got a great conversation for you today, great topic. And this topic is all about gallbladder. We have covered this topic before here in the Health Made Simple Show. I'm going to cover it again in a little bit more depth and a little more detail, but I'm going to make it really, really simple for us because, listen, unfortunately, this is still one of the most popular surgeries in our country. And I use that word popular like that because it sounds like it's an okay thing. And I'm telling you, it's not. There should not be any surgeries that are popular. We cannot normalize taking body parts out of the human body. This is not okay. So I'm going to shed some light to that. And if you notice by chance that it seems like in my voice, I have a little bit of edge here today, I might. It's been one of those weeks where on more than one occasion, I had more information and more news of patients and friends of patients that their teenagers are having teenagers, folks. Yes, I'm listening here. You heard me right. Teenagers are having their gallbladders removed, and this is not okay. And I'm seeing it as more and more of a trend. Early teens, 13, 15, 17 years old, a lot of young men and women in their early 20s having surgeries for their gallbladders. And again, if you feel a little edge in my voice, there's a reason, because I have a little edge here on two parts of it. One, if you are a parent, you have to allow your children to be educated. You have to give them a little tough love and move them in a direction that's going to serve their futures. That's what we're talking about. If we take their gallbladder out, and I'm going to cover this today because they say, oh, no big deal. Just your gallbladder. You don't need it. Your liver makes bile. Oh, man. Those people should be, they should be, you know what. Anyways. We have to. I'm gonna go into details. Well, that is not true. But really, what happens is they do the surgery and they say, "Hey, do you feel a little bit better?" And yeah, wow, look at that, mom. Look at that, dad. My stomach pain has gone away. I must be better. Anything bothering you right now? No. So therefore, there must be no side effects. Well, that is a big myth. It's a big lie. So my edge comes from the fact that, one, I understand it's hard sometimes to say no to our children when it comes to sugar and soda and all the junk and crap that's out there. But I do think that we're also the leaders of those future small human beings, and we have to do our best to bring them in a direction that's going to serve them in their future, right? Help them make good decisions. And then also, I have a little edge, quite frankly, right or wrong, but for the doctors that are willing to take these gallbladders out without making them maybe go back and say, listen, go do this for 6 months, go do this for 3 months, change up the diet and the lifestyle, and see if we possibly keep the gallbladder. All right. So with all that being said, thank you for being here. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love. If you know someone who has a teenager, or you have a child, or you know someone who has a child, maybe their diet isn't so great. And I know it can be a battle, but nonetheless, we're still the purveyors of the people of the future. So as adults, that's part of our responsibility. All right. So that's my little rant. And now we're going to dive in here. Let's talk gallbladder. And what's its role? What does the gallbladder do? So it's this little odd shaped organ that sits basically, if you just kind of went right down your sternum, right in the middle there, right with the bones, and just about there, it sits sideways. That's where your gallbladder sits. And predominantly, its job is that it stores bile. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And it releases it when needed. And often we think, well, here's been the kind of the predominant thought when it comes to the surgeries and why you don't need your gallbladder, that your liver makes the bile and then it stores it in the gallbladder. Yet, I will tell you, it's there for a reason. And there's a lot of very important reasons what I'm going to cover right now. Number one, it does this. It helps you break down fats and proteins, predominantly fats, we'll call it. And those fats are going to be found everywhere in nature, whether it be an animal and or a plant. Wherever there is fat, there's protein. So there is a harmony that is supposed to be taking place every time you eat protein. And we need what's called essential amino acids. Those are proteins. And then the fats get broken down into something called amino acids. So your amino acids get broken down into essential fatty acids. That's the key right there, folks. Your amino acids are getting broken down into your fatty acids. These fatty acids are essential for the quality for having good, strong human beings. So our gallbladder plays a huge role in helping us break down fats. And I'm going to address the fact that often we're told to stay away from fat in a way to preserve our gallbladder. That's not accurate either. So I'll tackle that in just a moment. So one of the functions of the gallbladder is to help you break down fat. Remember, good fats are good for us. The second part is that it helps you in detoxifying your body. it plays a major role in what we call phase 3 of detoxification. So if you take your gallbladder out, a major role of detoxification is going to be inhibited. So what happens is, as you have toxins that are going through your body, so you get to your stomach, your liver says, wow, look at who's that over there. And it sends a signal to the gallbladder to then squeeze, to flex. It releases bile onto these toxins so you can lubricate them so they can easily exit the body, literally poop them out. If you don't have that extra bile and you're bringing in lots of toxins, you're in trouble, because now your detoxification pathways are going to be congested. And this is why when they tell you it's okay to get your gallbladder, it is not. And we're going to go into that in just a little bit, in a little bit deeper here in just a moment. So we have it help, your gallbladder helps you, it makes bile, and it helps you break down fats. And then it also helps you eliminate toxins. It also, by eliminating those toxins, it's acting as part of a bridge of your immune system. So it's making sure that those toxins aren't recirculated into your body over and over again, where they can create damage. So we have a lot of these unknown, say, actions that your gallbladder is doing, and yet we're ignoring that because we think that, or at least we're being told, that all it's designed for is to have a little bit extra bile that your liver could support. So right away, I'll tell you this: long-term detoxification absolutely requires your gallbladder to be healthy, to be functioning strong, and having a plethora of very thin, loose bile ready to help lubricate whatever needs to be exited out of the human body. And again, it helps us break down our fats into fatty acids. Those fatty acids, they're essential fatty acids. They're critical for well-being in our body. All right, so that's really what the gallbladder does. Now let's talk about the stats for a little bit. And this is part that gave me my little mood this afternoon when I'm doing this, because this is kind of a challenging for me as a healthcare practitioner, when our goal, I believe, for all of us, is to do the best that we can to educate our patients, educate them, even if it means we have to hold a hard line and tell them, hey, listen, you got to clean up this. You got to do a little bit better here. And for me to continue to enable you by just cutting out body parts, then maybe I actually am not doing an awesome job as your healthcare provider or doctor, which means to teach. So again, a little edge there, but you understand where it's coming from. So this procedure for children ages 15 to 24 years old is the fastest growing group of getting gallbladder surgeries of the entire group of human beings. 15 to 24-year-olds, it is quadrupled since 2010. Quadrupled. This should be shocking to this. This should be eye-opening. I've heard some people and doctors say, well, our genes are changing. No, they are not. It's not our genes. This is diet. This is stress. This is lifestyle. These are the foods and toxins that we're putting into our body. Right now, on average, this is a stunning statistic, at least it is to me, as a healthcare provider, someone who's trying to preserve and exploit the amount of potential we have as human beings. When I hear this stat, it's mind-boggling to me. Over 600,000 people annually, and growing. That number is probably shy right now. I think that came from like 8 years ago. 600,000 people a year getting their gallbladders removed. 600,000. That's absolutely insane, especially because it is so preventable. All right. Yeah. So you understand where this comes from, and which means, and I'm going to lead up to this in a little bit. I'll talk about the symptoms, and then I'm going to talk about the causes, and you'll see why we're all pretty vulnerable. We're all pretty vulnerable to have gallbladder issues because of the foods that we've put into our body throughout the course of our lives, and that we're all probably vulnerable if we're not paying attention, and there are some things that we need to be doing. So, all right, so let's talk about the symptoms just a little bit. Some of the classic symptoms is burping. So the gallbladder is used to help break things down. If you can't break them down, it's often that you will build up a gas and you have burping. So if you're eating a meal, or just generally, if you're burping often, that's just one symptom that you might have that may indicate that your gallbladder isn't working so awesome. Another is gas. So coming out the other side, if you have frequent gas, it's another common symptom that you might have some gallbladder issues. And then we go into some of the other ones that might make you show up into the doctor's office, like pain, like literally you have gut pain. It can radiate a little bit up to the shoulder blade. It can radiate up behind, really both sides of the shoulder blade, but it can wrap around the ribs sometimes. But sometimes that pain could be pretty debilitating, and that's because what'll happen is you'll have a stone in there. As this bile starts to get very sludgy, and we'll explain the cause of those in just a moment. It gets sludgier and sludgier. It creates these little stones, and it can create numerous amounts of them. It can create big ones, small ones, but often it'll create a whole group of small ones and sometimes some large ones. And then when the gallbladder itself flexes and it compresses and it squeezes onto those stones, it's actually doing some tissue damage on the inside. And it can be super, super painful. The kind of pain that literally you're buckled over and you're sitting on the living room floor thinking that you're dying. And that is why, folks, often in the moment, people rush off to the hospital. And I understand that. And then in the moment, you go in with this pain, they do an ultrasound, which is kind of like the gold standard to check. There are some tests that we can do prior to that to see the writing on the wall. That's what it's always about with our health. Where are we? Have you collected the data? Are you paying attention? Are you keeping score when it comes to your body and your health? That's what we use. That's the ideal function of lab testing and keeping score. But if you wait until you're at that point, you're buckled over on the floor, you get all this gut pain. Every time you eat, you're having all this pain in your gut. You go to the doctor, they do an ultrasound, and they say, wow, you have gallstones and it's this large, or they're able to check how much things are flowing in and out. And they say, well, your percentages are this, and you're barely moving anything in and out of your gallbladder. At this point, the only thing you can do is remove it. That conversation happens way too frequently. On this side of things, and again, I'm not here to give you any doctor's advice. I'm not here to tell you to go against what your doctor's telling you to do, but I've been able to see clinically that over the years, people that had gallstones and have had all of these sludgy gallbladders and what I'll call dysfunctional gallbladders, I've seen them heal up. I've seen them, if they're willing to take the actions, and they're not that hard. You just got to figure out the right strategies. And that's why I still think it's always important that if you're going to seek out help for your health, instead of just for your sickness. And those are two different conscious choices there. If you're seeking help for your health, make sure you go to a provider. I'm going to recommend someone like a functional medicine doctor, someone like myself, someone who does things a little bit different, a little bit the alternative direction that allows you to generate health as a way of reducing your symptoms. All right. So with that being said, can we heal up these stones? Can we remove the sludge? Of course we can. Yes, the body has an incredible opportunities to heal. The body is an absolute healing machine. The secret here is we need to help it become a healing machine. And so let's go into those things right now. So the causes, there's a myth here, first of all, that there's a myth that foods with fat in them cause gallbladder issues. That is not true. The gallbladder is actually there to break foods that have fat in them down. Bad fats will make your gallbladder overwork, and then over time, it will become problematic. So what are some of the worst things? Diet is probably number one thing of causes when it comes to what is the issue behind gallbladder dysfunction. And number one in that, I would say, is fried food. Right next to that, we're going to talk about soda, high fructose corn syrup, same things that cause fatty liver disease, but fried food, French fries, donuts, fried chicken, you know the gig here. All of those foods we know are not good for us. Hey, listen, put potato chips into there. All of the canola oils, all of these things are bringing these bad fats, these seed oils into our bodies. Our body doesn't know what to do with them. They don't know how to break them down. So it overstresses, it overworks the gallbladder, and that's when that sludginess begins. But that's not it, because that sometimes we just hang it up and we just think it's just these fried foods and fats. It's not. So listen, if you're out there and you are using stimulants, using things like a 5-hour energy drink, you are Red Bulls and Monster drinks and all of those things will put a beat down on your gallbladder and the bile quickly. Those will put as much damage onto your gallbladder, and the way that bile is being able to easily flow into the intestines, that'll shorten that lifespan down quickly. It'll make it sludgy. So I'm always kind of surprised that we forget that those are the things that are leading up to. And again, the moment you feel the pain if you get that far and you've kind of ignored the gas, you kind of ignored the burping, you've ignored bloating is another symptom here. Diarrhea is another symptom. If you ignore all of those symptoms and you think they have nothing to do with your digestive system or nothing to do with your gallbladder, unfortunately, it's going to catch up. And then somewhere down the road is when eventually that pain episode happens. But that pain episode happens way downstream. Doesn't mean you can't fix it up, but it's a way downstream situation here. Another one that's often overlooked, and when it's overlooked, that means you can't utilize this strategy to fix things. So we have diet, of course, and then so I have some women especially. So probably the most common group, it's not the fastest growing anymore. That's the teenagers, 15 to 20-ish, 15 to 24. That's the fastest growing group. But the biggest group are females over 40. And so we call it female, over 40, fertile. All of these categories kind of increase the potential for obesity. So I hate saying it this way, but in school you learn it this way: it's female, fat, 40, and fertile. And if they had the 4 Fs, that their likelihood of having a lot of diseases kind of head their way, but nonetheless, this is a gallbladder kind of tipping point. And when you have all those things, you're female, you're overweight, so in beast we'll call fat, over 40, and you're fertile. I mean, you still have your cycle going on. These are the issues. These are where things get a little complicated. And the reason for all of that, quite frankly, its relationship to the gallbladder is high estrogen levels. So it is the high estrogen levels that ultimately increase the amount of sludginess that happens in the gallbladder. So again, we'll go into the fixes in just a moment here, but remember, that is a big issue right there. So it's not just the fats, but if you are a female and you have high estrogen, especially over long periods of time, which I would say, anyone out there who has experienced PCOS, who has experienced endometriosis, insulin resistance, all of those to some degree will come along with high estrogen levels. All right. And there's some other issues here too. Often a forgotten one is just flat out stress. We all know that there's a gut-brain connection, and part of your digestive system is your gallbladder. And under chronic stress, your gallbladder is affected immensely. So what happens is it stays in a flex position. It often is leaking too much bile in the beginning. And then as it becomes overworked, just like in the other situations, then the gallbladder becomes, the bile becomes sludgy. And once that becomes sludgy, then when it's supposed to go work, you eat something that has fat in it and it flexes to go to release bile. Then in that moment, you feel that compression, and that's where the pain comes from. All right, so we've got stress, we have females, we have diet, which we know all the bad guys there. And then another one, which can't be discounted here, and it's medications. And really I should just throw into this category all the things that shouldn't necessarily be in our body, all the processed foods, all the chemicals, everything. Remember, everything goes to your liver, and your liver is going to call on your gallbladder to help out. If it needs to eliminate toxins, processed foods, glyphosate, pesticides, herbicides, all of that needs a ride. It needs a ticket out of town. And that ride is going to be enhanced with the way that the body works, is that it lubricates those things, even your medication. So a lot of antibiotics can have a pretty damaging effect on the gallbladder. So just be mindful. And I know sometimes we need to take them, or sometimes we don't need to take them, but we're still taking them. So just be mindful. They all have an impact on the gallbladder. And I'll tell you this, all of us who have had a history of any of those things I just mentioned, chronic stress, if you've had a binge in your life for a couple of years, maybe, or a couple months, you were doing Red Bull or Monster drinks regularly, or you're doing those 5-hour energy drinks. You created a sludginess, and most likely it's still sludgy, and it'd be wise to go clean it out and clean it up. And you can. We'll get to that in the last part of this group, or the last part of this conversation. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about what happens. What are some of the complications with surgery, which I think are completely overlooked. And I think that it's something that we got to be mindful of. I hear too often, I get the opportunity to go around the country and to speak and teach seminars to other functional medicine doctors. And especially this past year, the biggest topic I'm talking about is gut health and adrenal function. And too often, I'll even hear from the doctors that people kind of just dismiss gallbladder surgery as a major surgery. And I'm here to remind you folks, anytime you have one of the parts that is in your body that God created and put there, you have it removed, it is a major surgery. At no time in our lives and in our history or in our future should we ever normalize any surgery, because our bodies were made essentially perfect. And it is our job to do the best that we can to help these bodies function at a higher level. So I know that sounds a little philosophical for a moment, but the more that we understand that the body works as a very complex unit, and it doesn't have spare parts, folks. I know in the conversation we're saying this sounds like a dumb conversation, but I understand. But unfortunately, we are told to kind of flip it. Oh, no big deal. You don't need the gallbladder. Your liver makes bile. Folks, we need our gallbladders, especially as time goes. So here's some of the complications. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, your gallbladder is part of your digestive system, which means it's part of your fat metabolism system. What happens when people have their gallbladder removed? If the doctor is doing their job accurately, they should also be telling their patients who they just removed their gallbladder, they should be telling them from this point forward, you're going to have to be on a very strict diet. You're going to have low sugars, low carbohydrates, no fried foods, no stimulants, no high fructose corn syrup, no syrups. You follow me here? All that stuff has to go, because now your body's less protected and less capable of handling it. And then what's the challenge here? Challenge is that that's why they got the gallbladder out, because they didn't change any of that. They didn't have to. So the answer before was to just remove it. So now what happens to the body? So once we now know that the long-term effect of removing a gallbladder is that it interrupts fat metabolism. What that means to us clinically, or what it shows up for us functional medicine doctors, that the individuals who have their gallbladders out, they no longer like to eat foods, even healthy foods that are required to make a strong human being, like animal proteins, like a steak or an egg that have fats in them. They start to lean away from these foods. And if you're leaning away from proteins and fats, what are you eating? Carbohydrates and sugar. So we can see it clinically that people who have their gallbladders out, maybe not immediately, and some of them, yes, as a result of their body's not capable of handling the fats as well anymore, it now leans to the easy side, which is carbohydrates and sugar. And we know, folks, that is an automatic health issue. We know that carbs and sugars, they are the bad guys. They're the ones that are going to decline mental capabilities. They're going to decline physical capabilities. They're going to be the ones that are going to age us faster, et cetera. So is there an issue with fat metabolism for people who have the gallbladders out as they go? Yes. What's the answer there? You have to have a very strict diet, probably a diet you've never had before, and probably one that your doctor's not recommending for you. So that's number one. Another complication is that there's a very good likelihood that if you continue to eat the foods you have, the symptoms that you were trying to avoid or that you had before, things like diarrhea, things like bloating, things like abdominal pain, they're all coming back for different reasons, but they're coming back. So remember, the bile is there to help slide things out of your body. In the event that you remove that bile and it gets more sludgy, you don't have it as available as you once did, now you're essentially going to become more toxic. So you're going to need more digestive support, getting with your functional medicine doctor, making sure that you have the proper digestive enzymes, that you're making sure your gut health you're healed up, you're not experiencing leaky gut, you're not too inflamed. All right. Another challenge here is your elimination will be changed. And I kind of just said this anyways, but your ability to remove things out of your body, what we call phase 3 detoxification. Over time, not right away, but often down the road, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, as your body has less and less available bile, you start to eliminate less and less. When you eliminate less and less, you don't feel like you had a complete bowel movement. It's a big complaint. A lot of people who have their gallbladders out, that they don't feel like they completely eliminate their bowels properly or fully. As a result of that, you have more toxins in your body. And what we see with this, and it's correlation, not causation. Well, I guess you can almost say this is causation. We see a lot of people who've had their gallbladders out develop skin issues down the road. Eczema, autoimmune conditions like psoriasis, as a result of being too toxic in the body. And you can't eliminate properly. The toxins build up in the body. They become recirculated. The body says, no, you can't be here. So your immune system starts to attack those elements that are recirculating in your cardiovascular system, in your circulatory system. And then your body starts to push these toxins out through your skin, and they develop skin issues like psoriasis, eczema, rashes, and whatnot. So this is very common, unfortunately. And listen, I know this sounds like bad news. These are the things that we should be having a conversation about before someone goes, oh, yeah, and your gallbladder has a big stone in it. We have to remove it. It's not doing anything. Well, help it do something. If you've had some bad habits, if you're a woman, maybe a little overweight, even if you're not overweight, listen, if you're eating the foods we're talking about, fried foods, fat foods, you're eating, you have a Red Bull here and there, you have high fructose corn syrup, you're having all these sugary drinks, you're having sodas, you have your Diet Coke every day, all of those things, they're sludging up your gallbladder. So then again, I'm going to get here in just the next part of this. I'm going to talk about what do we do to clean it up and consistently help clean it up, because it's an important part. Again, every part in the human body is important. So let's make sure that we're honoring and respecting all of them. So, and then I mentioned the other one of the challenges is that when you get the gallbladder out, inevitably the diet over time leans toward a more carbohydrate, sugar-based diet, because you don't have the ability to break down fat. So listen, fats are probably even harder for your body to break down, even healthy fats, than proteins are. And you could argue things like essential fatty acids, they may be some of the most important elements in the human body. That's what your brain is made up of. So if you're eating less fats, you're getting less omega-3s, you're replacing less of the DHA that's in your brain is made up of. So we start to create a situation where now some of the other diseases and disharmonies in the body, like neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, dementias, and Alzheimer's, those are all going to be influenced because you're not eating healthy fats and you can't break them down. So are there complications with surgery? There absolutely is. And again, have a conversation with your doctor, find out what your alternatives are. If they tell you there are no long-term complications or no long-term side effects of having your gallbladder out, either you're not asking or they're not telling you the truth, because they know what I'm talking about here. They may not know to this detail, but they know that there's always a complication and or a side effect when you remove a part that was designed to be on the inside of your body. All right, last but not least, and here's where the rubber hits the road, because we always want to figure out, how do we make this simple? How do we have all these things going on? Myself, I am one of the people that in the past, when I was traveling a lot between my Atlanta home and my home down here at the beach, one of the things I started leaning on while I was drinking Monsters. I know that kind of sounds crazy because I'm a health guy, right? But it got me through the day. And I remember going through this phase about 3 months of drinking these Monsters, even though I knew it was terrible for me. In the moment, it seemed like a decent idea because it gave me a little energy during the day when I should have been exhausted and in bed. But I didn't want to do that. I was at the beach and I wanted to, enjoy it. But nonetheless, as a result of being on these Monsters for a couple months, no doubt it changed everything. It changed the way my body digests food. It's harder and harder to break down proteins. Started leaning toward carbohydrates, higher sugars, more, like I said, more carbohydrates, sludge up the gallbladder. So did it create gallstones for me? No. But is it one of the things that I know I've done to myself? Drank alcohol in the past, had some fried foods, used to like having as many French fries as I possibly could eat. So all of those things that hopefully maybe we had the experience and now we learn better ways. And this is definitely a journey. Hopefully we're just getting better and better with our journey, and we accept and enjoy the journey more. But when we look back, if we know that we've created some debts, go pay them off. And how do we pay them off? We go treat our bodies. We detox them. We cleanse them. We support them in the process and the mechanisms that they want to do best, especially the process of elimination and detoxification. So here's a couple of things. One, let's talk about an overarching one, which is stress. I'm going to give a real simple one here on stress reduction. And all that is several times a day, focus on your exhale. If you could just slow it down for a moment, particularly do a long, slow exhale before you eat anything. That allows your central nervous system to slide back into really what we call parasympathetic activity. That's when your body is prepared and ready to release the digestive enzymes, things like amylase from the pancreas or bile from the gallbladder, hydrochloric acid from the stomach. When you're in that state, a little bit more relaxed, and you've calmed things down, and you're not go, 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 you have a better shot at digesting your foods that you bring into your body. So let's help the body, especially in those moments that we're going to put under stress. And to some degree, eating is stressful for the body because it all has to go to work. So let's help the body and create an environment and a state. And all we got to do is take a couple of deep breaths and focus on the exhale. The slower the exhale, the more reduction of stress you're going to have. So that's number one. Number two, there's so many good herbs. So this would be the strategies you'd want to use. So there's a conjunction that you want to ideally kind of focus. I'll tell you the exact ones we use in our clinic. So we know that the bile comes from the liver and then it's stored in the gallbladder. So liver support and gallbladder support here is really a ticket here. So a little bit of milk thistle for the for the liver. Globe artichoke and dandelion root are probably the best ones to help thin out the bile and support the functioning of the gallbladder. There's a product we use from MediHerb called Livton, Livton. So we use that product. So listen, if you did what I did and you just, you look back and be like, yeah, I used to put back some donuts, eat some fried chicken here and there, whatever it may be. Listen, every one of us would benefit for 30 or 60 days, just help support the gallbladder using herbs like I'm talking about right now, decreasing a little bit of stress. We can go a little farther here too. Ladies, I would encourage all of you to get really good, at least for like a 30 or 60-day phase where you're consuming decent amounts, if not daily, decent amounts of cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. One of their medicinal components or magics that they bring to the human body is that they're cleansers. And one of the things that they help do is reduce the amount of excess estrogens that build up in the liver. And that's where you're going to be really able to help things like your gallbladder, but also like losing your hair. So often you don't hear this connection, but hair loss and hair thin. And one of the ways that we really support that is by going back and cleaning out the liver, helping get rid of the toxins so the body can metabolize foods better, get those B vitamins back into the body and recirculate it to the body parts that they need to go to, especially things like the hair follicle. All right. So we want to lower the stress, use herbs, milk thistle, dandelion root, globe artichoke. We use one called, like I said, just mentioned, Livton. There's another product we use, which is probably my go-to, quite frankly, when it comes to gallbladder, especially if someone comes in and says, and when I'm doing an assessment or I'm watching them, I'm adjusting them, and I see that they have gas or I see that they're burping frequently. The first thing I use is something called AF beta food. And this is a phenomenal, very effective, very safe, very gentle product that we use. Predominantly, it's a beet product. Yeah, beets. Super high density. So we take a whole bunch of them, and usually at least 4 weeks, probably 6 weeks, maybe a little longer. And in that period of time, it really, really effective and help thinning out the bile. If someone knows that they have a stone, if they know that there have been sludge there that's slowing down the production going in and out, that is absolutely something that'll be part of that protocol. No fried foods, folks. Get off of all the stimulants. Make sure you go see a functional medicine doctor that's going to help lean you in the direction of not just eliminating the symptom. And listen, I'm human too. I want that symptom to be removed, but not at the cost of my future. So many of you that are listening to this, you're right on board with that conversation. So understand that sometimes we got to hunker down. We got some work to do. But especially when it comes to the gallbladder, the short-term fix is inevitably going to make the long-term more challenging for you, no doubt about it. So what I didn't mention here, so there are some ways that we see some writing on the wall other than the symptoms that we just talked about, like gas and bloating and burping and diarrhea. All of those certainly are outward clinical symptoms, but we can also do some lab testing that gives us some writing on the wall. The gold standard to see if you literally have stones in the gallbladder would be an ultrasound. Yet way before that, the same ones that we look at things like your liver enzymes, ALT and AST, those are very effective in helping us know what's coming when it comes to your gallbladder. So again, there is some lab testing that's very effective where we can catch things way before they're happening, way before you even get to that pain phase. All right, folks, real quick recap here, then I'm going to let it fly here. So gallbladder surgeries, unfortunately, have become more popular. They seem to be increasing every year. The statistics I have right now show that 600,000 to 700,000 Americans are getting the gallbladders removed every year. The fastest group, the fastest growing sector of that is people at the age of 15 to 24. And that is not okay. And it's not about our genes. This is about our lifestyle. We can change this. Thinking that it's just the gallbladder and that it's okay to take it out because you get your liver to make some bile is a big farce. It's a myth, and it's not one that should be propagated. So make sure that if you have gallbladder issue, you're asking your doctor about the long-term effects, which I just covered. Their long-term effects, yes, you're going to be less equipped to break down fats, which are a crucial part of human health. You're less equipped to eliminate toxins. So it sets a stage for things like long-term skin issues and toxicity and lower energies and change of hormones. We have some issues here that are creating it. Diet is probably number one. High estrogen levels are right there. The medication certainly, and then stress, especially chronic stress, are all part of it. Diet, again, that it's probably the most significant one, and that's not just the fatty foods, but it's also the fried, like, well, those are the fatty ones, but it's also those 5-hour energy drinks. It is the Red Bulls and all of the other processed drinks that have chemicals in them that your body has to then determine what to do with them. And then last but not least, folks, the strategies. Lower the stress, simple, exhale. A long exhale before you go to eat anything. Make sure that you're using, anything I said sounds like, man, I've been down that road before. I've eaten like crap for a while. I put in all this processed food. Maybe your health journey has just started this year. Maybe it's been going on for just 10 out of the 50 years been on this earth. So give your body an opportunity. Real simple. If you want one that we use, you can call the office. It's called Livton. It's fantastic. It has both the milk thistle, dandelion root, and the globe artichoke, and then something called AF beta food to help thin the bile. All right, folks. Thanks for listening in today. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing out. Keep spreading love. And of course, we're going to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. You gotta be awesome.